G'day, welcome back to my Swan Diary. Today we're going to be talking about intellectual OEs. And the theme of today is going back to the Dalton proposition. Be nice. So if you're familiar with the character of Dalton from the movie Roadhouse, you'll know that he's all about being nice.
In today's video, we're going to look at impatience, boredom, worry, perfectionism, and suspicion. We'll also have our happiness tip for the day, and our celebrity OE call out is one of Hollywood's biggest stars.
So, intellectual OE, and the theme of today, be nice to yourself and to others. And that's, bit me in the arse in my relationships, also at work as well. And there's been a couple of times where I've been actually pulled up by bosses for being impatient with people. Not that I mean to, but I'm in such a hurry to get things done, and I'm caring so much about the project that I'm working on that sometimes I can be a bit short and impatient with people, and forget that they need to get to certain places in their own minds on their own terms. So just because I've gone out and researched something and I'm convinced that something is the right answer based on the data, doesn't mean that other people don't need time to get their heads around it and understand it properly. So my strategy for this at work, and this is particularly useful for you if maybe you work in an office environment, particularly if you're collaborating on projects, you might find this helpful. First of all, I have to apologise. Every time I catch myself being an asshole or someone pulls me up on it, I have to go and apologise. And I have to realise that it's not my judgment of whether or not I've hurt another person that counts, or whether or not what I said was warranted. It's the fact that they felt hurt. So I need to apologise for that, and I need to suck it up. Once I've done that, I've tried to change my behaviour moving forward based on some of the feedback that I've gotten. And one good strategy that I like to use is letting people find out the answer on their own, because I now understand that when people come to a conclusion under their own volition, they're actually more on board with the idea anyway. So it works in your favour to not force the answer under their nose, but to let them get there in their own time. So what I've learned to do is make it my role to get others to participate in the conversation, and guide them with questions rather than spouting all the answers. So rather than throwing things in their face that they've then got to look at and decide whether or not they agree, I can guide them to the correct answers by questioning them and giving them hints and leading them along that way. And what you find in doing that is you develop your active listening skills. You can find things that you can build on in your own ideas, and you learn to appreciate what other people are saying more. So it actually gives you a bit of appreciation for diversity of thought as well. The other thing that I've had to learn to do, because I do have psychomotor OE as well, is to get myself a business face and practice it. Now, for me, my business face is Anthony Jeselnik. He is so wonderful at keeping his calm. I've actually wondered if he hasn't got OEs himself. Apparently his first leaning was towards physical comedy, and it didn't go down too well for him. So he went into his very morbid, dark style that we all know and love today. But one thing that Anthony's got is a steely delivery, and he's very unruffled, and he's very measured and patient. And I try to base myself off that without the dead baby jokes. So I get myself a business face and practice it. And you'll notice when I am talking about content that is more business-like, I will slow my voice down, my accent will drop off a little bit, and I'm a bit more measured in how I say things. If you don't have any reason to use business face a lot in your daily life, I suggest it's like buying a good suit or a good pair of clothes. Even if you don't need it for your work purposes, you probably will need it for, weddings, funerals, parties, those sorts of things. So get yourself a business face and practice it, even if you're not using it on a daily basis. And the reason why I say do it if you've got psychomotor OE is that when you start to care about things, you will get a bit of that Steve Irwin tendency to try and jump around and be passionate, and you'll get overexpressive. Now, when you're talking about something at work, in a meeting room, even if it's just data that you're getting excited about, when you start using big gestures and getting a bit frantic and your voice gets a bit louder, people can actually perceive that to be as, aggressive or upset or something else. So it's very important, even when you're delivering news that's either exciting or it's upsetting, you have to do it with a business face. Some of your other problems that you might encounter with intellectual OE and not being very nice is being bored at work. If you're, not living the academic dream or in the field of your choice, then the chances are you're doing some 9-to-5 job which really isn't scratching your intellectual itches. And all I can say is you got to forgive yourself for those feelings. I get a lot. It's not that I don't like my job. I do like my job. I love my team. So I have to forgive myself for that. Focus on the outcomes. Obviously, I'm getting paid. I'm keeping a roof over my head. This is tough times, and I'm glad to have a job, with COVID and everything going on. And I outsource my happiness, so I do this. I've got other hobbies to keep me occupied, and that's where I get my intellectual and creative stimulation from. And if you're a fan of Rick and Morty, just remember the Pickle Rick episode where Pickle Rick goes to therapy and the therapist says that this is just work. This isn't an adventure. But some things like brushing your teeth in life, you just got to do, and sometimes you've got to lump your job into that category too. With insomnia and worry, a notepad by the bed helps if you're having trouble sleeping. So if you think of something in the middle of the night, you just jot it down and then you can go back to sleep. I've used the Socratic method as well to get the root cause of why I'm worrying about particular things. And the other thing I've learned to do is not watch the news. When your own life is kind of falling apart at the seams, the last thing you need to be doing is concerning yourself with some political crisis that's happening on another continent, or things that you have no control over and you can't change. So I've learned to stick to the phrase of care but don't worry. So I can care about issues, and if something critical happens, then I can look into that in the news. So say it's COVID, for example. If something happens in my local area and our state government changes the laws for me, I'll definitely look into it. But apart from that, I try not to be watching COVID news every day because that will only cause me worry. So I also recommend not watching the news in a certain time before you go to bed as well. If you are trolling through your phone and looking at headlines right before you go to sleep, the chances are you won't sleep because you'll be worried. Again, care, but don't worry. If you have an opportunity to sign a petition or donate money, care. But you can't spend all your life worrying about stuff that's outside of your control because other stuff's just going to slip through the cracks. With perfectionism, I've learned to embrace the growth mindset, and you can go and Google what a growth mindset is, but pretty much it means that you accept the fact that you're continually learning through your whole life and you'll never be perfect. And if you're open to the concept of learning, which if you're an intellectual person, you probably are, then you can use that to catch yourself out every time you start expecting perfectionist things from yourself, or every time, you think you failed because you didn't get everything 100% right. So I've learned to plan to fail, and I've learned to enjoy failure. I've learned to enjoy test and learn, figuring things out as we go. And I've learned that, sometimes failure teaches you a whole lot more than success does, because there's all sorts of stuff you can get out of it. Suspicious. I was once a very suspicious person. And it was because I was reading between the lines of things that happened between myself and my partner. And when I eventually spoke to him about those things, it came out into light that really I was just making mountains out of molehills. But it was important to do that, to just go and have a chat. And if I need to get facts, I get facts, and I don't be sneaky about it. I would never look through anyone's phone or anything, but I can just say, look, I'm trying to shine a light on what the reality is to prove there are no monsters hiding in the closet. This isn't a monster hunt. This is about proving that there's nothing there, so I don't have to be suspicious. So if you treat things like that, often the conversations can go better. And sometimes you'll find out that's a perfectly good reason why someone's being sneaky. Perhaps they're organising a surprise party for you or something like that. So my happiness tip for intellectual OE. Now, if you've got intellectual OE, there might be a chance you've also got emotional OE, and that can work to your benefit, because my happiness tip is using your empathy to control your intellect. If the Dalton proposition is what we're aiming for, being nice, don't forget you've probably got a lot of love, a lot of emotion, and a lot of empathy. And if you think about people as being humans and your humanitarian love, it'll pull you out of most crises. So that's my happiness tip. Use your empathy to try and be nice to everybody. Dalton would want you to. My celebrity call out for this video has been someone I've been wanting to call out for a very long time. I'm calling out Robert Downey Jr. And if anyone's got OEs, I reckon that guy has, because there's no way he could have put all those OE-like behaviours into Tony Stark and Sherlock Holmes without being a pretty cluey guy himself. You clearly showed very intellectual and creative talent from a very young age. Even when I look at movies like Back to School, which you did with Rodney Dangerfield, you were always playing an intelligent, very quick-witted character. And I don't think you could impart so many of those little quirks into them without having them yourself. Robert, as you know, is famous for, has had his addiction and his life struggles as well, and I don't want to harp on about that. But he's also done things like gone through various explorations with his religion, so it's clear that he likes to question things as well, question the way that society works. He's very outspoken on politics and the environment and those sorts of things. So Robert, for showing huge intelligence, great imaginative creativity, a huge emotional soul, a person who enjoys his sensory stuff, because I don't think Iron Man and Black Sabbath would be so popular without a bit of your love of music. And for being just that quirky, twitchy person who's probably got psychomotor OE as well, mate, I'm putting you out there as the most likely person of all the people I'm going to guess at of having OEs. So I'm calling you out. I'm hoping everybody tags you in this, because I'd really love an answer to that question. So Robert, this episode is for you. But remember, I'm not an expert. I'm just one person with OE spreading my ideas in order to spread the happiness. See you later.
I've gone ahead and set up a group on Facebook and a page as well. I've also set up a Twitter so that you can get on there and share these videos and follow along.